Hey there, this is Alex with Arch Public, and today I'm going to walk you through the arbitrage algorithm in its entirety. So we'll go through operations, and we also will go through a couple examples using the recipe guides on our support site, as well as in general, just how to think about this. How would this fit with your other instances? So let's dive in. Before I get started, I'm going to assume a few things. One, that you have followed the setup guide for our Bitcoin algorithm, which really goes through how to connect your Gemini account to your Arch Public account and to your TradingView account. Once you have gone through the Bitcoin setup guide, we can jump right in here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pretend you haven't actually read the Bitcoin setup guide, and we're going to go and get the chart set up for the arbitrage algorithm. So first off, we need to make sure we are on the right symbol and exchange. So up here, I'm looking to my top left. I see Bitcoin US dollar. I want to make sure we're on the Gemini exchange, and let's just say you're not. If you select anything else that is not Gemini over here on the right-hand side, it will not function. So to go do that, you click all sources and you just type in Gemini. And now we're only showing pairs for Gemini. So I'm going to select the first one, BTC USD, because that is supported by our algorithm. And I'm going to click it. So now you can see we are on Bitcoin US dollar and Gemini. The second thing I'm going to look at right now, it doesn't matter so much, but just so we're all on the same page, change your time frame up here to daily. And we see that is reflected here and here. Now we're going to add our arbitrage algorithm to our chart. And to do that, you're going to go to indicators, invite only, arbitrage algorithm. We're going to click that once. And now you're going to see trade data load on your screen. So from here, we can go to the settings menu by hovering over the arbitrage algorithm. And I'm going to pull up the settings. You're going to see a couple tabs up here. Go click over to input. Right now, we're going to start with recipe number 1, which is going to help us generate some moderate cash flow. So you can either follow along here, you can reference it for later by going to our support site to find the recipe, but I'm just going to simply enter the parameters into here. So for our long threshold, it is -2.5. For exit, it's 2.1. Entry 580. You can see behind you as you go through these, the chart does change because it updates live given your parameters. Start date 2019 1/1. Let's just start fresh. Why 2019? If I scroll out here, you can see behind me, we get through 2 whole cycles. So you really get to see what happens during a downward bearish market. The number of bars, we're going to keep it 10,000. And we're going to start with both of these buttons checked here. I will explain what these do in a minute. Over on properties, let's set initial capital down to 100,000. And order size for the arbitrage algorithm does not matter. The only inputs that matter for your actual order sizes are going to be found here on your inputs page, entry and exit trade size. And I'm going to press OK for now. We just loaded our first recipe into the chart. Technically, you can now create an instance and go live with this. But for now, I'm going to tell you about a couple things. First off, this simulation is making a couple assumptions. The first assumption here is that the initial capital amount that you entered, in this case, $100,000, is the only available capital for the algorithm to trade during this entire time period. Now, this is over 6 years. So I would bet that that number is not actually accurate because there are going to be times where you have more capital and you want to add into these positions. So keep that in mind. This is really a simulation of a single source of initial capital where you're not adding to it. That's going to probably limit the upside in the simulation. But of course, in reality, you can come back in here when you get more capital and adjust your instance or create a new instance that reflects your actual balance in your Gemini account. On that same note, the second assumption the algorithm will make is that it doesn't actually know your Gemini balance, nor does it know what is going on in any of your other instances. If you're pulling money in and out of your Gemini account, if you're buying other cryptocurrencies, not using this specific instance, it's not going to know that. So what happens is you could run into potentially insufficient balances to actually execute some of these buy orders. In the end of the day, it's not a big deal. What's going to happen is it's either going to partially fill that order. So if a buy order is at $1,000 and you only have $500 in your account, it's going to try to fill that order at $500. Or if it's zero, it just might not fill. Either way, you might just miss out on a buy order, but keep in mind that it does not update live with your Gemini balance. Going down this line of thought, you might now be asking, well, how do I know if I have enough initial balance to actually run the strategy that I see on the screen? And so if you remember, if we go back to the settings here, we're buying $580 and we're selling $260. And we're saying we have $100,000 to start with. To help you determine if your initial balance is enough to run the given strategy. Over here on the right-hand side, you see these two stacked boxes. We're going to click that. It's going to hover over object tree first, click over to data window. You're going to see two pieces of information. One is simply, as you move the cursor over the chart, the open, high, low, close, and other information related to every candle. And then what we're going to be looking at is the one below it, which is arbitrage algorithm. So for this algorithm, we can actually see parameters that help us determine how much available capital do we have at any given time along this chart, what is our realized profit, and what was the cumulative buy cost. So if we start over in the beginning and I start to slowly move my cursor, we can see that our current equity, which is our available capital in our Gemini account, is slowly ticking down as we continue to buy. You can see the realized profit is moving up as well. That means we're taking profit and we're profitable with our exits. We go through these highs and we're at 30,000 now. And you can see LS amount, EN amount, and EX. That's simply the amount a buy or sell order is actually executing on. And then realized profit continues to go up as we go down here. So over here, I'm now running into an area where our available capital is very low. We're at $400 right now. And if I keep going, we're at 138. So we know that because our buy side is $580, we're not going to be able to actually buy anything that would be in this range. The algorithm won't actually place a blue buy order in here because we don't have enough money to even execute anything in here. You can see we start to move over these cells and now we're kind of ticking up here, 475, 625. Okay, so now we have enough money to actually enter the next time the algorithm determines so. So when we keep going over here, we see, hey, I see a buy order. Now we're down to 703 and another buy order, we're at 123. So you can see how data window will help you determine if I have enough money to run this strategy without adding any more money to my account and where that might be. So it's really helpful to determine your parameters here, what is realistic for the size of your account, and to size your trades appropriately. So let's say for this strategy, we notice we're running out of funds here. And I just want to make sure we can cover it all. So we go back into settings up here, go over to properties, and let's increase this amount to 110,000. And we can see a couple more buy orders popped up here where we ran low previously. So it looks like $110,000 is the actual amount of money you would need to run this from the very beginning without adding any additional cash. The data window is really helpful to determine that initial capital question. And I'm going to close out of that for now by just clicking it. So the next question I want to address is, with the arbitrage algorithm specifically, how much of this is cash profit and how much of this is in Bitcoin? And so to do that, we're going to open up the settings menu and we'll drag it over here so we can see net profit and we can see our settings window. And I'm going to go find the exit full position on last historical bar. When this is checked, this net profit here reflects the entire value of your Bitcoin if sold today, including the realized cash gains you made along the way. So right now we're at $308,000 for this particular setup. Now, if I uncheck this, the number is going to change. And because we're not exiting the full position, net profit is simply realized profit in this case. And so that means this is purely your cash position. So we know two things now. We know that our cash position is roughly $68,000. And if I check this again, our net profit is $308,000. So if you subtract those two, you're going to get the difference, which is equal to the current value of your Bitcoin holding right now. This comes out to roughly $240,000. So the split between your cash profit and Bitcoin holding is roughly 20% of the total net profit here is due to the actual trading and is in cash. 80% is held in Bitcoin by the end of this period. This gives you a really good way to understand and tweak the strategy to either generate more cash or to generate a bigger Bitcoin position. The last thing I'll cover here before we create an instance out of this is the buy-sell ratio in the recipe section. Whenever you find a recipe in the arbitrage algorithm list that you really like from a performance standpoint, but you need to either upsize or downsize the buy side due to your available capital, you'll have to keep the ratio between the buy and sell size exactly the same in order to reap the same performance. Currently, we are looking at a 580 buy side and a 260 sell side. So our buy side is 2.23 times the size of our sell side to keep the same performance, but increase our entry side to 1,000. So we're simply going to divide 1,000 by 2.23. which gets us $448. So we need to size the exit to $448 to keep the exact same performance. Now you can see how you can either increase or decrease the trade size to fit your initial capital. So let's set this up as an instance. First off, I'm going to change it back to the original recipe parameters, which are 580 by 260. And press OK. So this is what it's going to look like. We like this. Real quick, before we set up an instance for the arbitrage algorithm, we have to do two things in the settings. The first is we need to change the start date to basically any time in the future. It could be 5 minutes in the future, an hour, tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Today for me is 2025, 1/29, and I'm going to let it run tonight. So this is good now. The second important thing is make sure that exit full position on last historical bar is checked off. You do not want this on when you go to create the instance. This is only for backtesting purposes. So make sure this is very important here. Make sure this is checked off. Press OK here. And to set up an alert, go to the right-hand side to this clock button. This is where we set up our instances. Press plus. And now we get this alert screen. Make sure the condition, sometimes it defaults to price. Make sure it is the algorithm that you want to create the instance of, which is the arbitrage algorithm. Click OK. Expiration for me, I have a premium account, so I have the ability to do open-ended alerts. If you do not have a premium account, I believe they give you 60 days. So remember that if you only have 60 days for an alert, it will expire after this date. So you'll either have to remember to go in here and turn it back on, or upgrade to the premium subscription and get that open-ended alert set up. So I'll leave it to March 29th. For the message section, go to that webhook section on your Arch Public client portal, copy and paste it directly into here. This right now is just filler text. This has to be deleted and the right text from your account has to be pasted in here. Similarly, if you go to the notifications tab, you want to make sure this is the correct webhook URL, which is also found in your Arch Public client portal. Now, if you've done this already one time, this should be the right thing. It actually copies over every time you create a new alert, but just double check it. Here, real quick, you can change your notification preferences. So you can get it to send you an email every time this goes off, which I think is a good idea because you'll know that the strategy goes off. And if you see a corresponding transaction in your Gemini account, everything went through fine. If you see an email from here that the algorithm triggered, but you do not see a transaction on your Gemini account, you know that the order never hit the exchange. So it's either a technical setup problem or you don't have enough funds in your account to do it. I'm going to go ahead and press create. And in a moment now on this right-hand side, you will see the alert show up as active. So you can see that my alert for this specific recipe that we just set up is active now. Now that we've set up a instance with the arbitrage algorithm, your next thought might be, okay, but how do I string this all together? And so what we'll do is we'll use the second recipe, which is called Cycle Arbitrage. And basically, it's our way of setting up the arbitrage algorithm to really buy those dips and take advantage of the long-term swings that we experience in entire market cycles. Real quick, I'm going to input the properties here. So I've entered the parameters listed on recipe number 2 on our support site, but I'm going to take this down to fit more of a $100,000 initial capital amount. So let's cut this in half here. Let's call 25,000 and 12,500. And let's set this to the weekly. So what we're seeing now is the arbitrage algorithm recipe number 2. And so as you can see from 2019 onward, we actually took our time. We didn't make mini orders, but we did it at fairly opportune times, right? Mostly at the lows here. We sold on the way up, which if you experienced this personally, you would have been very glad you did this. And then we actually started to acquire in between here and really took 2 good buys here. Close a little bit off the top here. These are $12,500 sells, and then took some more off here. Putting these 2 instances together, we start to go from singular individual strategies to a comprehensive system of strategies. To really cover all your bases and goals when it comes to acquiring Bitcoin or getting in and out of cryptocurrency at opportune times. What we're going to do is we will set up this instance as well. But before that, let's make sure that we understand how much initial capital we'll need to run both of these strategies. So if you can recall, we needed $110,000 to use the instance that we set up previously. And I'm simply going to open my data window over here again. And let's make sure that we can actually use this strategy the way it is. So I'm going to just scroll over the chart essentially and look at my current equity over here, which is my available capital, my Gemini account, as long as we haven't done anything else. And I see that right here, we're at $13,000 in cash before we start to sell. And this looks to be accurate here. I don't see an area where we're below $25,000, which is our buy size. And no, there is no buy order. So I believe it should be able to execute on $100,000. Let's verify this again. Yes, there are still those 2 buy orders. There's these over here. So this strategy can actually execute on $100,000. If we want to look at this as a system now, we have our long-term market cycle recipe and then our short-term recipe. You would need approximately $210,000 to do both at the same time. If we like these settings, once again, before we set this up, we're going to have to do 2 things. We're going to have to change the start date to sometime in the future. And we're also going to make sure exit full position is checked off. We'll press OK. This is now ready to load into our instances. We're going to create a new instance here. Make sure you select the arbitrage algorithm. Make sure expiration is either open-ended or some date in the future. Make sure you remove this webhook message here. Go grab the right one from your Arch Public client portal, and then also verify that the webhook URL is the correct one from your Arch Public client portal. We can actually give this a name, and let's just call it Market Cycle. And we'll press create. Now you're going to see it pop up here. Here was our original algorithm. You can see it's the right one because it's on that daily time frame, or rather our market cycle algorithm we have right here is on that weekly time frame. So they're both active. They will both hit your exchange. They act independently. This instance is not looking for this one to fire. They don't know your Gemini balance. Keep that in mind. Another reminder is that you can have as many instances as you would like, no matter how big or small. The one caveat to that is Gemini has a minimum trade size of $10. Other than that, feel free to explore, plug in our recipes, stack them as you wish, and build a strategy that really suits your goals.